You are tired in a way that sleep cannot cure. You know this already, don't you? It's not your body that's exhausted, though perhaps your body carries the weight too. It's something deeper, something that no amount of rest or vacation or distraction can touch. You wake up tired, you move through your day tired, you go to sleep tired. And the tiredness isn't about the hours you've worked or the tasks you've completed. It's about the life you're living, the person you're pretending to be, the soul you've been ignoring. This is what Carl Jung called psychic energy depletion. And if you're experiencing it, I need you to understand something crucial right now. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not failing at life. What you're experiencing is a sacred exhaustion, a spiritual signal from the deepest part of your being, and it's trying to tell you something that could change everything. Most people mistake this tiredness for depression or burnout. They think they need more motivation, more discipline, more coffee, more willpower. But you've tried those things, haven't you? You've pushed through, you've told yourself to be grateful, to think positive, to work harder, and still the exhaustion remains. Because this isn't a problem that can be solved by the mind that created it. This is your soul speaking in the only language it knows when it's been abandoned for too long. Jung understood something that modern psychology often misses. He knew that when we live disconnected from our authentic self, when we spend our days performing for others, meeting expectations that were never truly ours, wearing masks that feel heavier with each passing year, the psyche begins to drain. Not gradually, but profoundly. The energy required to maintain a false life is immense. Every moment you spend being someone you're not, every decision you make that contradicts your inner truth, every time you silence that quiet voice inside that whispers what you really want, you're bleeding psychic energy. Think about how you spend your days. How much of your time is devoted to activities that genuinely feed your soul? How often do you do things because you authentically want to, versus because you think you should? How many of your relationships are real, and how many are performances? How much of your personality is actually yours, and how much is borrowed from what others expect? This is what Jung meant when he spoke about the persona. The persona is the mask we wear in society, the acceptable face we show the world, and some degree of persona is necessary. We all need to function in society, to relate to others, to navigate the collective world. But here's where the danger lies. When the persona becomes so thick, so elaborate, so consuming that we forget there's a real person underneath it, we begin to die inside. The exhaustion you feel is the exhaustion of maintaining an identity that isn't truly yours. You've achieved things, haven't you? You've checked boxes, you've met goals, you've done what you were supposed to do, and yet the satisfaction you expected never came. Or if it came, it lasted only a moment before dissolving into that familiar emptiness. Jung said that neurosis is the suffering of a soul which has not discovered its meaning. Read that again. Not a soul that has failed or a soul that is damaged, but a soul that has not yet discovered its meaning. The tiredness, the emptiness, the sense that something is profoundly wrong, these are not signs of failure. They are signs that you're living the wrong life. Modern existence accelerates this soul fatigue in ways previous generations never experienced. We are bombarded constantly with images of who we should be, what we should want, how we should look, what success means, what happiness looks like. We're told to optimize, to hustle, to maximize, to perform. We're taught that our worth is measured by our productivity, our likability, our achievements. And so we run faster and faster on a treadmill that goes nowhere, wondering why we feel so empty despite doing everything right. The collective world, the society around you, has its own agenda. It needs you to be predictable, manageable, useful. It rewards conformity and punishes deviation. It offers you ready-made identities and pre-packaged purposes. And for many people, this is enough. They can live contentedly within the collective values, following the prescribed path, wanting what they're told to want. But you're not one of those people, are you? If you were, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't feel this bone-deep tiredness that no amount of success can cure. Jung spoke about the tyranny of collective values, the way society imposes its expectations onto the individual soul. And for those who are called to individuation, called to become truly themselves, the weight of these collective expectations becomes unbearable. You feel it as exhaustion because you're trying to fit yourself into a shape that was never meant for you. You're trying to want what others want, to value what others value, to find meaning where others find meaning. And it's killing you slowly. This tiredness you feel, this profound weariness with everything, it's your psyche's way of saying no. No more pretending, no more performing, no more living for others, no more betraying yourself. The exhaustion is actually a form of protection. Your soul is refusing to cooperate with a life that isn't yours. It's staging a rebellion, and the weapon it's using is this overwhelming tiredness that makes it impossible to keep going the way you've been going. Jung called this a crisis, but he also called it an opportunity. He understood that the darkest moments in our psychological lives are often the threshold to transformation. When everything falls apart, when we can no longer maintain the false self, when the exhaustion becomes so complete that we simply cannot continue, that's when real change becomes possible. Not the superficial change of new habits or positive thinking, but the deep, structural transformation of the entire personality. What you're experiencing right now is what mystics have called the dark night of the soul. It's the moment when all the old structures collapse, when nothing makes sense anymore, when even the things that used to bring you joy feel hollow. And it's terrifying, because we're taught to see this as failure, as something to be fixed quickly, medicated away, thought away, hustled through. But Jung saw it differently. He saw it as the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. Your tiredness is not random. It appeared at this exact moment for a reason. Something in you knows that you cannot continue on the path you've been walking. Something deeper than your conscious mind has recognized that the life you're living is not the life you're meant to live. And so it's forcing you to stop, to question, to look inward, to finally confront the truth you've been avoiding. This is your invitation, not to fix yourself or to try harder or to find new ways to cope with an inauthentic life. This is your invitation to come home to yourself, to begin the journey inward, to discover who you actually are beneath all the masks and expectations and performances. The exhaustion was never the problem, it was always the messenger. And the message is clear. It's time to wake up, you've heard the call. Now comes the part most people run from, the descent. Because understanding that you're exhausted is one thing. Actually doing something about it, actually facing what lies beneath that exhaustion, that requires a different kind of courage altogether. And I need you to understand something before we go further. What I'm about to share with you isn't comfortable. It isn't easy. And it will ask you to look at parts of yourself you've spent your entire life trying to hide, deny, or project onto others. But if you're truly tired of everything, if you've reached that sacred breaking point, then you're ready. You're ready to turn toward the one place you've been avoiding, inward. Jung said something that most people misunderstand. He said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But notice he called it a privilege, not a right. Not something given freely, a privilege earned through the willingness to face what others will not face. And that journey, that path toward becoming yourself, it doesn't begin in the light. It begins in the darkness. It begins in what Jung called the shadow. The shadow is everything you've rejected about yourself. Every quality you deemed unacceptable. Every desire you labeled as wrong. Every impulse you pushed down because it didn't fit the image you needed to maintain. Every part of you that didn't match what your parents wanted, what society demanded, what your persona required to survive in the world. All of it, repressed, hidden in the basement of your psyche. And here's what you need to understand. That buried material doesn't disappear. It doesn't dissolve. It sits there, in the unconscious, consuming massive amounts of psychic energy just to keep it locked away. Think about it. Think about how much energy it takes to maintain your persona, to keep up the act, to make sure certain parts of you never see the light of day. That energy has to come from somewhere, and it comes from your life force itself. This is why you're exhausted. Not because you're weak, not because something is wrong with you, but because you're using enormous amounts of energy to wage a civil war within yourself. Part of you trying desperately to be acceptable, another part screaming to be acknowledged, and all of it draining you dry. The shadow contains everything you've disowned. Your anger if you were taught to always be nice. Your ambition if you were raised to be humble. Your sexuality if you learned it was shameful. Your vulnerability if you had to be strong. Your wildness if you needed to be controlled. Your darkness if you were supposed to be light. Whatever you rejected, whatever you couldn't integrate, it's there. Waiting, growing, gaining power in the unconscious. And here's the twist that changes everything. The shadow isn't just negative. In fact, some of your greatest gifts, your deepest creativity, your most authentic power, it's trapped there too. Because you didn't just repress the bad, you repressed anything that threatened your survival, anything that made you different, anything that would have gotten you rejected or abandoned or cast out. So you buried your genius along with your rage, your authenticity along with your shame, your true self along with everything you were told was unacceptable. Jung discovered something profound. He found that the more civilized we become, the more we develop our persona, the larger our shadow grows. Modern life demands constant performance, constant adaptation, constant suppression of anything raw, real, or unpolished. We're taught to be professional, appropriate, acceptable, safe. And with every act of conformity, with every moment we choose the mask over the truth, we feed the shadow. We make it stronger, we give it more power over our lives, and the shadow will have its say. One way or another, it will be heard. If you don't consciously integrate it, it will unconsciously control you. It will leak out in your relationships, sabotaging intimacy because you can't be vulnerable. It will emerge in your work, creating blocks and resistance because your authentic creativity is locked away. It will manifest as projection, where you see in others exactly what you refuse to see in yourself. The things you hate most in other people, the qualities that trigger you, that disgust you, that enrage you, look closer. You're looking at your own shadow reflected back. This is why you're tired. You're exhausted from running from yourself, from maintaining the split, from keeping up the illusion that you're only the acceptable parts, only the light, only the persona. But wholeness, real wholeness, requires integration. It requires you to turn around and face what you've been fleeing, to descend into your own depths and reclaim what you've abandoned there. Stop watching. Go to the comments and write, "I see my shadow." Do it now. The descent inward isn't metaphorical, it's an actual practice. Jung developed a technique he called active imagination, a method of consciously engaging with the unconscious. Not through analysis alone, not through thinking about it, but through direct encounter. You create space, you turn your attention inward. You allow images, figures, emotions to arise from the depths. And instead of pushing them away, instead of analyzing them to death, you engage with them. You dialogue with them. You ask them what they want, what they need, why they've come. This terrifies most people because it means loosening control. It means allowing something other than the ego to speak. And the ego, your conscious sense of I, hates this. The ego wants to remain in charge, to maintain the illusion of mastery, to keep everything under control. But the ego is just a small part of the total psyche. Beneath it, around it, lies the vast unconscious, containing everything you've forgotten, everything you've repressed, everything you never knew, and something far greater. The self, the totality of who you are, the organizing center of the entire psyche. The self knows what the ego cannot know. It sees what the ego refuses to see. And when you're exhausted, when you've reached the end of what the ego can manage, the self begins to assert itself. It sends symptoms, depression, anxiety, exhaustion, not as punishments but as messages. The psyche is self-regulating. It will create whatever crisis is necessary to force you back into balance, back into wholeness, back into truth. But here's what makes this even more complex. The shadow isn't the only thing you've rejected. There are other parts of the psyche, other figures in the inner world that hold tremendous power. For men, there's the anima, the feminine aspect of the soul, the gateway to the unconscious, the bridge to feeling, intuition, and relatedness. For women, there's the animus, the masculine aspect, the capacity for focus, assertion, and logos. These contrasexual figures carry qualities that consciousness has rejected or never developed. If you're a man who's been taught that sensitivity is weakness, your anima holds your capacity for emotional depth, for creativity, for connection. She appears in your dreams, in your fantasies, in the women you're drawn to or repelled by. And until you integrate her, until you develop a conscious relationship with your own inner feminine, you'll project her onto others. You'll seek completion in external relationships instead of finding it within. You'll be exhausted by the endless search for someone else to make you whole. If you're a woman taught that strength is unfeminine, your animus carries your power, your voice, your capacity to act in the world with authority. He appears in your convictions, your opinions, your attractions. And until you integrate him, until you claim your own inner masculine, you'll either suppress your strength and feel powerless, or you'll be possessed by it, becoming rigid, opinionated, cut off from your own feminine ground. The journey inward means meeting these figures, not as concepts, but as living realities within your own psyche. It means developing relationships with the parts of yourself you've exiled. And this takes time. It takes patience. It takes the willingness to sit with discomfort, with confusion, with the unknown. The unconscious doesn't work on your schedule. It doesn't reveal itself because you demand it. It emerges when you create the right conditions. Silence, solitude, attention, respect. This is why modern life makes this work so difficult. We're constantly distracted, constantly stimulated, constantly running from one thing to the next. We fill every moment with noise, with activity, with anything that prevents us from being alone with ourselves. Because being alone with ourselves means confronting what we've been avoiding. And most people would rather stay exhausted, would rather keep suffering than face that confrontation. But you're different. You're here because something in you knows there's no other way. You've tried everything else. You've tried achieving more, consuming more, connecting more, doing more, and none of it worked. None of it filled the emptiness. None of it restored your energy. Because the exhaustion isn't physical, it's spiritual. It's the soul's way of saying no more. No more pretending, no more performing, no more living someone else's life. The descent inward is a return to yourself, to the parts you left behind, to the child who knew how to play before they learned to achieve, to the adolescent who had dreams before they were told to be realistic, to the young adult who felt things deeply before they learned to numb. All of these parts are still there, waiting in the inner world, holding pieces of your wholeness, holding the energy you need to truly live. And as you descend, as you begin this work of integration, something miraculous starts to happen. The energy you were using to maintain the split, to keep the shadow at bay, to suppress the unacceptable, that energy becomes available again. You stop fighting yourself. You stop the exhausting work of pretending to be only half of who you are. And in that release, in that integration, you find not just relief, but power. Real power. Not the ego's power over, but the self's power through. The power of wholeness. The power of truth. The power of finally being who you actually are.